Welcome to today's episode. We are going to discuss why Africa should trust science in today's episode. I am Lillian, your host, and with me is my co-host, Dr. Evelyn Gitau, and our special guest, Dr. Wanjiru Kamau-Rutenberg. Welcome. To put it into context for you, our audience, I think it would be nice for us to start by discussing what we mean by science. Mm-hmm. What exactly do we mean when we talk about science? Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think for me, science is a method of discovery. Mm-hmm. And the reason that's important is there are conversations about the scientific practice of science being un-African. Mm-hmm. And I'm very clear about what side of that argument I sit in. Mm-hmm. Science and the scientific practice is as African as everything else. Mm-hmm. Our people have always been curious. Our people have always tried this versus this, seen what works better and adopted what works better. That's what science is. Mm-hmm. It's curiosity, discovery, and adoption. Yeah. And Africans own science as much as anyone else does.
Mm-hmm. Evelyn?
Yeah, I think Wanjiru has said it really well. Yeah. It's the systematic pursuit of knowledge. Mm-hmm. And knowledge is embedded in us as Africans. Mm-hmm. And you know, one of the things we've been talking about is this whole indigenous knowledge and why aren't we imparting it to everyone? Systematic evidence generation and knowledge generation and curation was part of our DNA, was passed through storytelling. And where we've lost it is because we're losing the community effect of how we transfer the knowledge that we have, the indigenous knowledge that we know. So science is there in everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. You know, we've gone back, some of us, and I'm talking about my hair, to natural hair.
Yes.
But I spent the whole of the 90s trying to, you know, in Kenyanese, muzungufy my hair to make it more manageable. Yeah. Then we suddenly realized that there was a whole science behind how you managed African hair that existed before even my parents were born. Mm-hmm. So it has always existed. It's just that the transfer of knowledge has changed. It's become very Western focused, looking at, you know, science and knowledge being what has been brought to us. Yet, if, you know, we were beneficiaries of at least doing Kenya's people of the past, African people of the past, we learned a lot of the science. You know, I don't know if you've taken your children to any of the heritage sites in Kenya. A lot of the science of fire making, a lot of the science of iron making, all that existed before the white man came to Africa. So I don't know why sometimes we forget that actually it exists. Now we just need to tap into it to educate ourselves and contextualize the knowledge that we have.
Yeah. And I think it's also because when we talk science, you know, the immediate thinking is that it is from the outside into the continent. And so that then is a segue into our question of the day. Why should Africa trust science? The issue of trust, you know. So what do we, when we talk about trust, what do we mean? Especially when we're talking in the context of science. What do we mean by trust in relation to science?
I mean, so what do you trust? What do I trust? I trust something that I value, number one. I trust something that I feel has me in the middle of it. So the problem with why science generally, globally, at the African level, is not well trusted is because of how I value it. Who has brought it to me? What is being sold to me? So I think we need to think about the value of science and then how we package it and sell it in an African context. And it comes back to what are we trying to sell as knowledge? Why are we generating the knowledge? And in what context is that knowledge being demanded so that it can be utilized? So for me, it's that trust issue. We need to talk about, what do I trust? What do Africans trust? Africans currently in today's world are trying to demand that we give them interventions that deal with their problems, but not problems that have been defined for us. When We Are the World, the song came out, right? It was about that African child who was starving, who was hungry, and the only intervention that was being sold was, if we feed them, it will all be well. Yeah. But behind that hunger were other issues that were not being addressed. The fact that already climate change had taken effect. Climate change is not new to Africa, but, and here's the big but, we're dealing with it almost like an afterthought in Africa, yet we've been dealing with the issues of climate and soil change and poor agricultural practices for the last 40 to 50 years. But suddenly, because it's becoming more global and global, we are addressing it differently. So, I mean, that's where for me, we really need to start is why science? And who is asking for the science? And how do we get communities to understand and own and demand the right science for them? Yeah. I don't know, Wanjiru, if you have any thoughts on that.
I think for me, the key word is own. You trust the thing that is yours.
Yes.
And you distrust the thing that is foreign and strange. And to the extent that the colonial moment caused us and forced us to see science as something foreign, foreign from us.
Yes.
Then we don't trust it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the moment we're in right now for our generation. Is this fundamental question? Is this science ours or is it not? Having have come up in the feminist movement, for example, I remember in the 80s and 90s where those of us who were arguing for equal rights for women were being told these feminists are Western, they're Western funded, they're bringing ideas that are foreign to Africa.
Still happens today.
Which pre-colonial African society did not have women in power? Which pre-colonial African society? What is actually foreign is these ways of doing patriarchy. What is actually foreign is these ways of telling women yours is in the kitchen. I know for a fact my great-great-grandmothers had their fields, they tilled their fields, they went to the market. Today we are here teaching African women to do micro-enterprise. It's in our DNA already. I think some of these things is also about waking up politically to who we have always been, recognizing the colonial moment as a moment of disruption and rapture, and get back on the journey to picking up what we already had. These are not new things.
No, they're not.
I mean, our great ancestors are the ones who came up with sharpening stones, obsidian stones to create tools. Kama hiyo sio rocket science, I don't know what is. If that's not rocket science, I don't know what is. I mean, that is science. Exactly. That's innovation.
It is.
So at what point did we get convinced we are idiots? And those who are coming from abroad are the ones who know how to solve our problems. For me, this struggle over science and what is science and do we trust and own our science is the last anti-colonial frontier.
Exactly. Yeah.
Our grandparents fought for independence, physical nationhood. Our parents have fought to build states, to build infrastructure, to build governments, to build administrations. Our generation is for
we need to unlock
that colonial mindset to finally leave us. Let's at least leave our children fewer fights.
And getting equity and equality from a perspective that it's not, we're not trying to be at the table because we are now woke and knowledgeable and educated. No, we're at the table because we always had the education and the knowledge to be at that table. No, of course, I reflect on the Ishangobon and the Ishangobon, and the history of mathematics. The Ishangobon was not brought by the colonialists. It was here. It was on the continent with mathematical calculations on it. And for the audience, if you don't know what the Ishangobon is, go and do some history and find out what it's all about. It's about the history of mathematics. We know it exists from an African context. But then why do we keep trying to why do we keep downplaying our own knowledge and our own.
For me, that's what's infuriating.
Yeah.
No, like at some point, no one is doing it to you. It's us who's doing it to ourselves. In seeding ground that is already ours.
So when you look at what I'm hearing, it looks like there is an intrinsic connection or link between science and trust.
Oh yeah.
Why is this? Because when you look at everything that we're talking about, you find that they're intrinsically connected.
I have a perspective on this. A lot of times, again, and I will keep calling the colonial moment a moment of rupture and dislocation that we are recovering from it. But in the history, it's a blip in African history. And then we keep going. But we have such a hangover, Yani. Ooh, that is actually our problem. We have a hangover from that blip still. We're still looking for Maramoja to get rid of that hangover.
What is Maramoja?
That paracetamol.
That's the instant one, the hangover cure.
Okay, okay.
And we need actually a Maramoja, an instant one for us to get over this hangover. But here's the thing also. I think the link between science and trust is who are the scientists. And during that colonial moment, we were told, we as Africans, with this sun-kissed skin, are not smart enough to be scientists. That our knowledge is irrelevant, useless, doesn't matter. And scientists are pale and get sunburned quickly. That is something then that has caused us to struggle with our populations, our people, our brothers and sisters. Because who is still positioned as the thought leaders doesn't look like us.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so passionate about producing the next generation of African scientists. And to what you were saying, scientists who are solving problems, not problems that are defined abroad, but problems that are defined here on the experienced on the continent, defined on the continent, and solutions produced by people who have lived them. Wallahi, if you've ever been bitten by jiggers and you know how that is who will know how to solve this thing.
Exactly. Really about necessity being the mother of invention. We know that and we talk about that, but then always reflecting on how our mindsets were changed to the point, we are always laughing, the Kiswahili serikali nisaidia, government please help me.
Oh yeah.
So we are so rooted in someone else defining our problem and then helping us with that problem they have defined. That we forget to say, hang on, this is my problem, number one. I need you to solve it. Or actually, I need to solve it myself. So how do I solve it myself? I think that's the link we really have to bring back to ownership of prioritization, which has always been a problem. In terms of farming changed because the white man came and defined farming in a very different way for his own need. The cash crops were defined not by our need, but by what they needed to send back to their. Yet we've had a stranglehold on what we define as cash crops. Is what we export.
Yes.
And not necessarily what our people need to be sustained and to be fed, to be nutritious. No. So this is the moment, as you said, we need to unlock our mindsets and hopefully leave our children with the mindset that says the definition of what I do and what I count as gainful is what is serving me. Not the West.
So we are also looking at sorry.
No.
I was going to say, when I hear both of you speak, there is that mindset that has really impacted the way we think, and that could really predominantly be a pre-colonial mindset, right? But how about the struggles between science and trust that come out of junk science? Fraudulent science. How are we, handling these issues? Because I know we've seen, scientific publications pulled down, recalled because of fraudulent science. is that something that you see as also contributing to issues around science? And what happens when we get to situations where even scientists are not agreeing amongst themselves?
It would be a scary day if scientists all agree amongst themselves about one thing.
I was going to say
that is bad science.
Yes.
All of them all agreeing. That is religion now. So, I mean,
she said that's religion, which is a good way of putting it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's the difference between science and religion.
Yeah.
In religion, there's a creed. We all believe the same thing. Science is, it's supposed to be testable. There's reasonable doubt, and doubters ought to get their day also to say, this. So now, when it comes to junk science, I think every villager has its madman. Every community is going to have its outliers.
Yeah, that's true.
And we just, what I like about the promise of science itself is that soon enough, the village madman will be discovered who it is. So soon enough, the junky science is identified and known. That one is junky, and we usually keep it over there. And the rest of the community continues arguing amongst themselves.
And really coming back to what science is. Science is about testing and disproving and really working to say this is why an innovation, an idea, a policy is good is because we have tested it, right? So if you always come back to what is the truth? What is driving truth? And if it's based on evidence, science will always, at the end of the day, really win. And that's how you build trust. You know, that point, I like that example of that village joker, the guy who always has some untruths, right? His noise will become less and less the more you give the right evidence and put it in the right space. It's hard because social media has a way of amplifying what is sensational, what is exciting, what is excitable. So the question for us as scientists is, how do we also manage, we were talking earlier about when you become the superstar, when you become that individual and it's not really the impact that you're driving and not the science, how do we ensure that we can, I don't want to use the word sensationalize, but it is really what I'm trying to, how do we make sure that science, true evidence is exciting enough that people can look at it and that we can drown the noise of the fake science, the junk science. Really, that's maybe where we need to think. And maybe that's why this podcast is happening. I don't know.
And I think one of the challenges we face as people in the industry of science is that when you speak about science in fun, relatable ways, then you're called unserious. So how do you harmonize the two? Because ideally, ordinary people, ordinary in quotes, you're not ordinary. You're just, but you get what I mean. Really what I'm saying is that people outside academia, people who are known scientists, they always look at science as abstract. It's them, those ones there, they're doing their thing, and when we speak science, sometimes people tend to switch off because, it's science again. It's that boring subject. So how are we able to speak about science in ways that are interesting, relatable, but as well as not becoming too sensational, then to be looked at by our counterparts and peers as not being serious
and authentic and real.
Exactly.
I always reflect on from a traditional perspective. There's something about the traditional medicine man.
Yes,
he couldn't be common. I mean, he had to create this whole mystery, and that's our DNA. Also, we need mystery. The old teacher, the one that came historically, was that guy who his truth was the village truth, right? So but then you have to ask yourself, what made people believe and trust this guy who was so mysterious and so there was some authenticity, because that medicine man who would dance around, he gave you something and it cured you. It didn't, hopefully the good ones didn't kill you. Some that we all know, even in that space, they're the good ones and they're the ones who kill you. With whatever. But the minute he kills you, his mysteriousness becomes a bad thing. So for us, in terms of science, we always have to make sure that we push best practice. You asked the question of, junk science, fraudulent science. We've got to always call out fraudulent science. And I think that has been a problem. We've talked about negative results and whether we should publish them. I think we should, to show the world that we've done a test. We thought this was the right thing. But actually, when we tested it, it was not right. And then document it. We do not publish negative results. And that, I think, for me, that's where the mistrust starts. Is because we don't tell people when we've tested something, because it's not a mistake. You come up with a hypothesis. The hypothesis can either be right or wrong. That's why we do our PhDs. That's why we're in the lab to test something. But now, when you never tell people when you've tested something and said, actually, we tested this and this isn't the right thing, that's a problem. Because the only thing we tell them is we've tested something and this is good for you. But you don't tell them that by the time we got to this one, we had tested 100,000 other things.
And we had even tested many times and failed.
Exactly.
And gone back.
And gone back and changed it and made, and bringing it, the issues that you're passionate about, Lillian, around telling the community about why we are testing and why this is good, and engaging them with the why and the so what at the beginning.
Yes.
Really, this is how you build trust. And trust is not, in a marriage, if the guy is always telling you you're beautiful and never ever so often addressing perhaps if you change this a little bit, we would do better. That becomes a problem. So having a real relationship with the communities we serve, where we expect impact to be, is what we're talking about. And real relationships are based on sharing the good and the bad.
The unserious, if you're not buttoned up, probably even a kabota is somewhere in there, you're not doing science. The question I have is, what tools do we have in our diversity of African cultures that can help us ensure that the scientific venture is relatable? I think that thing of scientists have to be serious and not smile at people is it doesn't, because this thing you're doing has to end up in people, as she's saying. It has to end up in people's hands. Science that just stays on a shelf somewhere, I mean, it's necessary, but someone has to pick it up off the shelf and bring it into changing lives. That transition has to happen. I'm almost itching to come to a question of policy in government. I spend my days with biophysical scientists, but my actual training is as a political scientist. My doctorate is in political science, where I spent a lot of time looking at identity issues and government policies. And there's something you're saying about serikali's idea that I think sometimes in Swahili it's serikali. If you actually think about the terms, the words sirikali, that's where the word serikali comes from.
Oh, sirikali is serious secret.
Serious secret, very tough, firm, strongly held secret. Now, back when I used to be a political science professor, I used to teach this. The standard board literature in political science on the origin of the state is war. European wars. And then the kings needed to collect taxes to fund wars. So then administration systems came up. And then because now you're taxing these people, there becomes an obligation to deliver services. That is well and good. But that is not the origin of the African state. The origin of the African state is a colonial one. The modern African state has a colonial origin. And that colonial origin is evident in its name, Sirikali. It is, government is here, people are here. And that mentality, and Mahmoud Mamdani is one of my favorite authors. my favorite book ever. It's called Citizen and Subject.
Yeah.
And he talks about how in the colonial state, Africans entered the modern African statehood as subjects, not as citizens, because citizens can demand accountability of their governments. And so even when I look at what's happening in Kenya today, this next generation is saying we now want to move from subjects to citizens. And that's the contestation underway. What does this have to do with science? A couple of things. I was in a conversation with a group of people who are in the agriculture, in the food systems space in particular. And we were talking about government is really good at ensuring regulation and compliance when it comes to export crops. Think about it. Kenya is a huge exporter of horticultural produce. You go to Tesco, you go to wherever.
It's Kenya.
It's grown in Kenya, grown in Kenya. Yeah. The green beans all over Europe, grown in Kenya. So it tells you that we have the capacity to regulate and ensure compliance of agri-chemicals. How many times a year are we seeing news reports of the food that is being sold in urban centers is oversaturated with heavy metals, with chemicals, complete dysregulation. You go buy your tomatoes tonight, you have no guarantee that those tomatoes are not slowly giving you cancer. So we as a country have the capacity to meet European export standards, but we refuse to meet those same standards for ourselves, for our people. And again, for me, and I was trying to tell these folks in agriculture, in business and science, you need to understand that it is, again, the nature of the state and its relationship to its people that causes these policy decisions to be made. And that also applies to research. Does the state, because we are saying we want African scientists doing research in Africa, to solve African problems. Who should fund it?
The government.
Our governments should fund. Are they funding it? No. So why are our scientists designing research programs that respond to funder needs? Because that's where the money is. It's not that they are dumb. It's not that they don't know the problems that exist here. It is our governments are not funding our scientists to solve our problems. And for me, the origin of that structural setup is the structure of the modern African state that absolutely needs to be transformed.
That's true.
Evelyn, Wanjiru is really pointing out some very
poking
very serious issues here. Even just talking about science. And I know that as Science for Africa Foundation, we fund science. We fund African scientists. We prioritize science. Now, what would you say about what Wanjiru is saying?
There are so many thoughts that have come to my mind as Wanjiru was speaking, because, we keep saying from science to impact as a foundation. That is our tagline. But then I was like, I reflected, when she brought out the subjects versus citizens. For the longest in science, we've always, in our protocols, we always say study subjects. And I paused there and I said, already as a scientist, I have defined the participants who I'm saying I am working with and for.
You've established
a hierarchy by calling them study subjects. I think luckily, we've transitioned from that a little bit.
Yes, we now call them participants.
But even then, I'm not sure that brings the equity we want to demonstrate. And that comes back to the whole scientific citizenship that we've been talking about, and who defines the citizen and who defines the science. So for Science for Africa Foundation, we of course trying to look at issues of equity and inclusivity in everything that we fund. We've with you, Lillian, for example, from a community and public engagement perspective, is asking scientists to define better and to work better with the communities they work with. Not from not at the end, we were so good at disseminating science. Is saying, have your priorities, have you had community engagement? Have you had public engagement? And what that means is really integrating, a lot more for the social scientists. I'm not a social scientist. I'm a chemistry person. But the social scientists have taught us to think about participatory research more and more. Implementation research is easy to define if you are working with the people you're implementing with and for. So we are also funding a lot more implementation research. But I'm always cautious that when we start talking implementation research, it's almost like implying that the discovery scientists, the guys thinking about the blue sky science, don't need to engage with the communities. But us at Science for Africa Foundation, what we're saying is, at the center of it all, it has to be people. So when you're writing your proposal to us, we actually look at, does your bold idea address and does it bring in lived experiences to it? We're doing funding some research in mental health. But what we've done and we're doing, and our lead in this mental health program is actually looking at studies of how you work with people with lived experiences. Because you can't actually define interventions without people who understand the problem. So that whole, how you worked with people in lived experiences, especially with mental health, because these are vulnerable populations. You can bring them in, you can work with them. The way I don't shout, but the way sometimes I engage with the people I work with, sometimes you're impatient. Most scientists are impatient. But when you're working with people with lived experiences in mental health, for example, you have to sometimes remember it's a vulnerable population. I need to temper my impatience and work with them in the way they need to work. Sometimes we take interventions into the field because we are so impatient as scientists. We do not want to take the time to understand what it would mean for the community. So at Science for Africa Foundation, we're coming up with guidelines on how to engage people, how to work with them from the beginning, and how to implement it at their timelines, not the funder timelines that we define. So we're trying to change even how long we fund research. Those 3 to 5 year timelines are actually not realistic when you're trying to answer a scientific question. It has to be long-term. So the investments we're trying to make are long-term, 7, 10. Hopefully, if we get more funding, if people in the audience feel they want to give more money into the foundation, so that we can fund long-term 20-year projects that will answer and change how our children will live. So for us, those are the few things that we're trying to implement.
And also, I hope, now I'm going to put you guys on the spot.
That's okay.
I hope there's a component of your work that's about getting governments to put in more money into research.
Yes.
A policy engagement component. Because ultimately, philanthropy is a great de-risker, but it's not sustainable.
No.
And we really, for this continent, we need sustainable funding for research. And I agree.
Seen
that happening outside of government.
So one of the things I like saying is it's easy to tell governments you need to put in more money. And I say, it's good. Then I always refer back, as a Christian, the story of the 10 talents, right? So we're constantly telling, as scientists, saying, you're not giving us enough. And now suddenly governments are saying, if you say what I'm giving you is little, I'm going to take it away.
Oh, yeah. No.
So we are seeing this being demonstrated, especially in the geopolitical shifts that we're seeing right now, where governments are saying, we're going to shift this to address like primary healthcare issues and education, which is their main focus, and we agree. And forgetting that with the little they've given us, and we have not demonstrated it, we have actually managed to change and use R&D to change some things that have actually impacted lives. So I think we need to change how we talk about our government investments. Coming back to my example of the 10 talents, because in the 10 talents, the guy who was given one said, I was so afraid, I just put it, I hid it. So what did the guy come? The rich man came and said, okay, now that you're one talent, let me give it to the guy with 10 who multiplied it. So we need to start reminding ourselves that, like in public universities, even if we say there's no money going into research, we don't pay for the buildings we're in. We rarely pay rent. There's a lot of in-kind contribution that we could actually by government that we could demonstrate with the little you gave us. This is your return on investment. So a language that many of us don't talk about.
Yeah.
We need to bring that banking language into
that.
everything and saying, the little investment you gave me, I turned it into this. This is what I did.
And I think
so imagine if you gave me just even 2 times more.
Yeah.
This is I could actually the 100,000 lives I managed to save, it could actually multiply to a big chunk of the population.
Yeah.
These
I'm curious where you're seeing that impact. For me, it's when I look at the work on indigenous vegetables, especially here in Kenya, and when realizing that when I was a kid, sukuma was it, and spinach. And now I go, there's saga, there's managu, there's
different indigenous veggies.
And every high-end restaurant, you can reliably expect that if you ask for a plate of managu, it will be procured.
Yeah.
For me, that is the product, and I know some of the researchers who have been doing that work. To me, that just makes me really proud.
And really demonstrating, as you said, the evidence is there that indigenous vegetables actually survive better in our environment. Yeah. But for the longest, we were still trying to sell the non-indigenous veggies as good. And, actually, in terms of nutrition, the indigenous vegetables have a lot more. Yes. They give us everything that we've been looking for. Even when you're looking for probiotics, for example, our sour porridge, dare I say, the indigenous brew has probiotics that can heal so many things.
Yeah. But I think the challenge, the issue around indigenous foods is because when you eat local foods, then you're looked at as you're poor. When you eat vegetables, you're poor. You have to go to KFC to demonstrate how well you're doing in society. And I think that's where challenges come. But picking up from what you're saying, Evelyn, I think also the other thing that, talking about how our governments are investing, that's for sure. And like Evelyn has said, it's just how we are packaging that support. So I'm looking at, a scientist who is at, let's say, looking just here locally, University of Nairobi, and is doing research, or, their salary is paid by government, maybe water and, like you said, the building, if their labs are in the university, that's government investment. But how are we able to quantify that and say, this is how much comes from government as their contribution to African-led science. But we still know that we're a long way to getting what it takes to invest in African science and R&D. And, R&D is research and development for our audience who may not know what R&D is. But then being able to say, this is how much our governments are bringing in. And of course, we know that we still have that journey, but this is what we've turned that investment into, and we're still mobilizing. But I totally agree with you, Wanjiru, that it's still important for us to continue to motivate,
advocate for more
governments.
I'm hearing you say how we advocate for more needs to shift.
It
shouldn't just be beating government over the head of you are not doing enough. Doing enough. It's saying, hey, we appreciate this.
Exactly.
And this is what we've I really like that approach. And I saw it in the CGIAT where I'm now sitting, where in the last round of reforms, there was a conversation where host governments, a lot of them in Africa, for example, the government of Kenya hosts ILRI, the Livestock Research Institute, there's ICRAF, agroforestry, there's ISIPE on insect physiology, a whole host of these organizations. And then some within the CG, others with not part of that conglomerate. But host government saying, the fact that we host you represents a tremendous value that you're getting.
Exactly.
The tax we are foregoing in hosting you. The facilitation we're giving you as international research organizations is us investing in research.
That's a big one.
I like giving a personal demonstration. So when I started working at the Kenya Medical Research Institute in the early 2000s, it was 2001, it was us in a little house in Kilifi by the hospital. Kilifi was the sleepiest of sleepy towns in Kenya, right? Everything you see today in Kilifi did not exist. The impact of having And we were hosted by the government. Kenya Medical Research Institute is a public institution. The land we were on belonged to the hospital. If you look at the return on investment in hosting what was initially 20 researchers and a few field workers has translated to a very vibrant city as a result of research economy. Now, if we could package that a little bit and think about why it happened.
Yeah.
So you had a few of us who were doing our PhDs at the time. You're in this community. You decided to support one child from the local village, many of whom are now PhD fellows or postdocs who are leading science. I mean, 25 years later, many of us who went there can say, I supported all these children and many of them are leading research. Impact of research within a community.
Yeah.
The university, Pwani, has grown. We were teaching. Before I left Kilifi in 2015, 2016, well, I'm not going to go back to teaching, but I can tell you, I tried to teach organic chemistry in the university, but it's that thing of the university became, a technical college became a university, and that university is becoming a very vibrant university. The employment that was built. So return on investment from a government perspective, are you creating jobs? Kilifi, the center itself, hires 1,000 people. 80% of those people are from the local community. Now think about those numbers. This is not small. We always laughed when the devolution happened. A lot of our field workers were the ones who became the political leaders because of the exposure that they had within an institution. So you see what I'm talking about? How you package the return on investment on research is not just necessarily the dollar amount. There's so many things that can happen.
For this message. This message needs to go out.
So I really, sorry, Evelyn, go on, sorry. No, I'm handing it back to you because I know this conversation between these three ladies could go on for the whole day.
No, but that takes us into the issue of what are the best practices we've seen as a result of this, because we don't talk about this enough. And for me, I see these issues that you're pointing out, that we're speaking to. And if only we could find a way to really package this in ways to demonstrate, then I guess that way, even the communities we're struggling with on the continent in terms of science and trust will start looking at these because they don't know these. It's just within us. But then again, it takes me to the issue of, so where are we getting it wrong? And I think that's where we're getting it wrong, how we are communicating or how we're sharing whatever we are doing in the science world with those outside science. So as we wrap up, I think, like Evelyn, you've said rightly, we just need these conversations you can't fold up in just a few minutes.
There's so much to say.
Think it's important for us to have some parting shots for our audience, on the issue of why should Africa trust science? Based on our conversations already, we see that these are coming out. But then just to reassure our audience and our listeners and viewers, why should communities out there, why should our politicians out there trust science? Yeah, if we can just wrap it up in a few minutes.
I would say don't trust, but verify. Sorry to quote a non-African. Trust but verify. It's important that as we continue forward, remember science is not un-African.
Exactly.
Science is as African as Mount Kilimanjaro.
True.
It is ours. It's important, though, also to continue producing African scientists and insisting that African scientists put themselves towards African problems. And government has a role to play, much as we also rely on philanthropy to de-risk the entire system. But at the end of the day, science is not foreign. We invented science. When that first human took a stone and sharpened it and said, look at this, I can do more with this. That first scientist was African. So I don't know we know when we lost it, but let's go back and get it.
Okay. Evelyn?
I think I'll speak to the scientists. Because a big problem of trust is sometimes how how we behave as scientists. Number one, if we're not addressing African issues as scientists, our communities will not trust us. So we need to come back and reflect about who we are and why we do what we do. Did you come into science as a job, or did you come into science to make impact? And whose impact? Where is the impact? Who's defining the impact? So from an African perspective, to build the trust we need to work with our communities, for our communities, and genuinely not to be that, that PhD that got it in the 60s who was, I am professor, I am doctor. It's good. We should demand respect in everything that we do, whether you're a shopkeeper or a scientist. But we should remember that if we're not working with our communities, for our communities, and for what is good for us, because science can be, they say education is the best equalizer. Actually, science will be and should be the best equalizer if it's happening for the local, in local context, to develop us as a continent. Yeah.
Awesomely said. And for me, as I speak and say goodbye to your audience, the key issue is to know, just like Wanjiru has said, science is as African as they come. So we should not look at science as being just the externally supported research and science, but that we as Africans are part of the science, have always been and will continue to be. And therefore, I would like to motivate you to join us in asking the questions that you would like to hear us address around this issue. And as we do that, keep healthy, keep alive, and see you next time.